Jack here with one of the funnest projects I think I've ever done. In this case, we're going to take a beautiful shot of Michelle taken by Hal and Victoria Smith out of the Light Workshops School of Photography out of Morro Bay, California, Central California on the coast there. Wonderful, incredible school for hands-on photography and digital darkroom training. And we're going to take this shot and we'll jump over to our little snapshots here as you've become familiar with. And I'll just jump right over to where we're headed. And you're going to see here that what we're going to get is a pretty elaborate change before, after, all being done in Lightroom. And this is a project that's kind of showing us how far we can push this glamour glow look within Lightroom. Up until this last version of Lightroom, there's no way that you would have attempted to do some sort of glamour retouching within a procedural editor. And from my standpoint, that's just, yeah, you know the term. It's just bitchin'. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start back over. We're going to walk through a few steps just in review. We're not going to start all the way from the beginning. You'll notice sometime with these projects, I'll do the entire project from zero to done, all during one movie. Usually that's done pretty quick. Hopefully you realize, as in the last project, that I would normally take more than just a few minutes to do the effect. If I'm not talking, you could probably do most of these effects in about 30 to 60 seconds. So if they're a little bit on the rough side, you understand that I'm trying to teach a concept and do like going from start to finish on most of the projects. But in here, because we've covered a number of things, I'll start in a little bit further into the project. And for that, I'm going to come over here to our snapshots, the left side of the develop module here, and I'm going to click right here. And that's going to be simply after we've done our four-step tango to optimize our basic color and tone on the file, we've gone in here and we've done a number of adjustments in terms of removing blemishes on the model. And though this is exaggerated, this sort of retouching you would normally do in Photoshop, I did want to show you how far you could take the use of the healing brush. We're going to be doing some projects specifically for the healing brush. That'll be coming up, so I'm not going to elaborate on that now, but I will just do a quick little touch as an example for those of you who may be familiar with how it works in Photoshop. Let's just quickly take a look at what we have, the differences here within Lightroom. Basically, you have the size, the opacity, and you have clone and heal. That's something that people don't realize, is that you have both clone and heal capabilities for what's known as the spot removal tool in Lightroom. I think it's much more of a retouching tool. It was originally designed just for getting rid of censored dust spots. You can see how far we can take it. Later on, you'll see the difference between clone and heal. The vast majority of the time, the heal works great. That is the default setting. Size is big enough to cover your issue. And we'll cover opacity in a second. That is actually a great capability to have that here. But in this case, take your size of your brush, use your square bracket keys to size it, click. It's automatically going to choose a spot for you. If you have that H key that hides or shows your overlay, you can see that you can get a preview of what you're going to use by dragging around this spot. If it did a first great job, when you clicked, wonderful. You don't have to move it around. So it's just click over the image and be done with it. We'll come over here, size of the brush, click. If it chose well, just move on to the next one, space bar. Here, let's see what we can do with this. We got a little beauty mark here, we'll say. And we can't remove it. In this case, we will, because we're going for more of a fashion look. But typically, something like a beauty mark or a mole is part of the personality of a person, so you can't completely remove it. I'm going to click on it here, and it is going to do that instant little fix. Tap the H key, and you can see the removal that it did. You can move it so it chooses a different spot for the fix. Find something that works for you. But the issue here is that you can't remove a mole because that's what a person remembers or thinks of when they see a person. If you remove a mole, it's going to be jarring. It'll actually distract from the portrait by its removal. But you may want to minimize it. Aunt Marge's mole may be casting a shadow like the Eiffel Tower. And so what can you do? Well, you could put a little makeup on it, or in this case, you simply get rid of it completely. And which, by the way, I can see that there's a little edge right here. That's a little bit darker. I'm going to change the size of this. Clicking and dragging, you can actually change the size after the fact by getting onto the edge of one of the circles, and then you just simply click and drag it, and it's going to change it, the size. So now you can see it encompasses the entire area, and there's no longer that edge. But back to it. We don't want to get rid of the mole. It's active right now. I'm going to come over here with that active. And again, we can tap the H key so it stays visible. I'm going to just change the opacity until we still see the mole, but it's a little bit less distracting. Okay, so it's up to you. Let's go ahead, spacebar click to zoom out, H to hide. The mole is still visible, but it is less distracting than it would be if it wasn't there at all. In this case, as I mentioned before, we're going to go for a fashion look, so we'll get rid of it completely. So there's just a couple tips related to the healing brush. You can just go tap, tap, tap with a size bigger than the issue at hand. Remember, you can reposition the circles if it doesn't automatically choose an area that you'd like, and you also have opacity at your disposal if you'd like to reduce rather than remove something. But let's move on to this area of enhancing the image with the adjustment brush. And I'm going to jump to another little snapshot here, and again more of a review of what we did on the project just prior to this, where we're enhancing eyes. So in here we're going to come up here, we're going to jump over to our adjustment brush, and we're going to see that we have a number of areas that have been adjusted. I'm going to click through them just as a reminder to what we've already done. Click on the iris, the catch lights of the eye. Let's come over here and get us back to our 1-to-1. So this area right here, with it active, there's our mask area, and that's, as I mentioned, is kind of my kitchen sink. You can see over here we've got a 50% brightness, 50, 50, 50. I made it simple for you. Contrast, saturation, and clarity. All of these things are being done to exaggerate the light bouncing around within the eye of the model. Being careful not to lighten up below the eyelid, because that should be in shadow, and also not doing the entire iris, just the opposite of the primary light source, which in this case is above. And of course I went over from one eye to the other. The whites of the eye are, in this case, an increase of the brightness and a decrease of the saturation. Whether you're removing the redness of an eye or ambient light reflected in the eye, in this case a plus 25 brightness, minus 25 saturation is a great way of minimizing the darkness of the eye, or increasing the brightness of the eye, as well as getting rid of ambient light. You'll also notice that I also painted within the catch lights of the eye to remove that ambient light color. And I also painted over the teeth, because a little bit of brightness and a little bit of desaturation is a great way to get rid of stain and just give an extra little dental hygienic look to your model's teeth. Okay, but let's do a couple other things with this while we have it here related to the eye, something that I didn't do on the last project, and this is we're going to actually sharpen the eye. Okay, it's already very, very sharp, but I want to do a little bit of oomph to it, because of course the eyes are the window of the soul. That is what everything is, everybody is looking at in terms of the image here. So let's come up and do just one extra little, like I said, oomph to the eyes. So I'm going to hit New in the adjustment brush. In this case, I'm going to use Clarity for the edge contrast that we've talked about. We'll take that like we'll start off with something like a plus 50. We're also going to do a sharpness. Let's actually do, well, we won't get carried away, a plus 25. And also a plus 25 on sharpening. Remember, you have sharpening in a brush. And oftentimes, rather than doing a global sharpening and thereby sharpen things like pores in the skin and everything else going on, you want to do a targeted sharpening just where it's needed, like around the eyes and the lips. So in this case, I've got a nice big soft brush. I'll tap the O key to allow me to see the mask as I paint it. I do not have auto mask turned on. I'm just going to come in here. I'll click around the edge of the eye so I don't get confused with where this adjustment is, what this adjustment is affecting, or what the overlay pin is affecting. This is actually a good point. Since I could have this pin that's going to affect the entire eye, I could click on the iris. I could click anywhere within this area. The problem is I wouldn't know whether that pin was an iris or white of the eye if I did that. These are pretty clear because they're over the point being adjusted. If I'm going to take this and do the entire portion of the eye, I'm going to click on something like the eyelid to let me know what this pin is adjusting. So just because you can put it here doesn't mean you should. So I'm going to come up here with just a little plus clarity, plus sharpness, maybe a little, not quite so large of a brush, and I'm just going to come up here like that. Big, soft, and subtle, done. Come over here, big, soft, and subtle. You go, I have no idea what you're doing. I know. Let's tap the O key to hide that, and here is our before, after, before, after. Let's actually delete that pin. It'll leave the settings there, so now I'll do it without the mask so you can kind of see it as I paint. It's going to be subtle. Okay. In the new Lightroom 3, you can actually, even though we're not at 100%, you actually can see the effects for the sharpening at other magnifications. If you're actually working on the Detail tab, I recommend you are in 100%, but you can see the effect even if not. Okay, that's the area being adjusted, and it's a subtle improvement. We'll take that clarity up just so you can see it. It's almost like a mascara. You can exaggerate that eye, get really carried away. Maybe we will take that up to a plus 50 again just so you can see it on this compressed video. The nice thing is I can use that same little oomph. That's what it's doing to the eyes right there. And the other area that is often essential for a portrait is the mouth, the lips, the smile. I'm going to do the same thing, tap that O key so I can see where I'm painting, and I'm going to come up here to the lips and use that same little oomph adjustment over the lips. Tap the O key, and now you're going to see before, after, what that's doing to the lips to make them more glossy. Love it. Last thing that we're going to do here is we're going to come up here and do our Glamour Glow. This is a really fun little technique, and oftentimes people don't realize how far you can push it. We've mentioned before that you have an anti-clarity option over in the Basic tab. If we jump over to the Basic tab, remember we went over this idea that you have clarity that starts at 0. You can actually put in an anti-clarity to soften skin tone, and you can see what that does. The problem is that's global. That's softening the eyes and everything else. It's doing a great job of softening the overall skin tone, especially for a glamour look, but it's also affecting things like the lips and eyes. So we're not going to do it, and we didn't do it as part of that tango. We are going to come up here and do it as part of an adjustment brush manipulation. So let's do that. Let's come over here. We're going to hit New. We're going to put in, after hitting double-clicking Effect to reset those settings, we're going to take that clarity. We're going to do, since this is fashion, we are going to exaggerate like a minus 75. Okay, minus 75 on our clarity here. And that is going to give us a lot. And we're not done. We're going to do something else, but we'll start off with just clarity. And this is going to be fun once we get to the second step of this. We got a big old honking brush here. I'm going to tap the O key so I can see the mask when I start to paint. In this case, the face completely fills the frame. Rather than just paint around the skin, leaving the eyes intact, it depends upon you how you like to work. In this case, 90% of the image is all skin. So I'm going to cover the entire image with this little anti-clarity softening, and then I'll punch a hole with the eraser where I don't want the effect. So it's up to you whether you want to paint around the skin, leaving the eyes, or paint over everything and erase the eyes, whatever is quickest. I'm going to start, in this case, as I mentioned, I put the pins where I know what they're going to do. I always start, if I'm doing a global skin softening, by clicking on the tip of the nose. That way, every time I see that pin, I know it's exactly the skin softening adjustment overlay. So click. I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to paint over the entire scene as fast as I can. Remember, Shift O is going to allow you to go through different colors. If yours isn't coming up green, which is awfully nice for working on a portrait, just Shift O, and that allows you to cycle through white, none, red, and green. Okay? How do you get to the eraser? Well, that pin is active. Hold down your Option or Alt key. I'm going to take that feather is down a little bit. Auto mask is turned on. I'm going to turn that off. So I've got a big, soft, subtle eraser now. I'm going to come up here and I'm going to click and remove the clarity where I don't want it. And I definitely don't want it around the eyelashes and eye of my model here. Beautiful Michelle, again, shot by Hal and Victoria. I don't want it on the eyebrows or around the hairline. So in this case, it's quite simple to come up here. I will leave it off as it goes further back toward the ear. I'm going to leave that off. I am going to take it out of the lips because in this case, I think they are a significant portion of the story of this image. And you can see where the big, soft, subtle comes in like that. I could do the bottom of the nose. Let's see if I need to do that. Okay, a little bit more cleanup. How do I hide the mask? Tap the O key, and here is our, tap the H also to hide those pins. Before, after, before, after. That's what we've done with the adjustment brush, not only on the eyes, but now on the skin. The last thing that we'll do, that pin is still active. Remember, we have the edit, a little label up here that tells us that we have a active pin, even though we can't see it because we tap the H key. Clarity is edge contrast. We removed the edge contrast, all the subtleties of edges in the pores and skin. We even added a little glow. You'll notice a little spill of light from the background onto the model, which I love. We soften the ear, all these other different things in the skin. We're going to add another adjustment, and you may be tempted to say, well, sharpness. Let's take out where we have all this detail in the pores of the skin. You never want to blur the skin. This is removing edge contrast. This isn't blurring the skin. That's the great thing about an anti-clarity. What we are going to do, though, is increase contrast. Okay, what is contrast? Contrast is midtone contrast. Clarity is edge contrast. If we remove edge contrast, we can still exaggerate midtone contrast. And that's a great thing because that's going to exaggerate the distinction between lights and darks. And lights and darks is how you shape light around something like a portrait or a figure or a product or whatever. The exaggeration of lights and darks in a controlled fashion is how you shape or bend light around a surface, especially a curved surface. So watch what happens when we take the contrast up. You have the ability to exaggerate the distinction between the lights and shadows. If you take it too far up, of course, anytime you increase contrast, you increase saturation. So if you do want that exaggerated look, you may have to take down saturation as well. In this case, I don't want to be too greedy. I'm just going to take that to a plus 50. And here is our before, after, before, after. I think a wonderful ability to shape the overall softness of the skin while still seeing every single pore within the model's skin. That is great. You're getting exaggerated skin softening without any reduction in the pore structure. And again, if you get carried away, remember you can use your little clicking on the point, looking at the little sliders. Here it is, no effect. And as I drag it over, we are exaggerating it. Okay, you can see even taking that all the way up to a plus 100. Okay, so down and up balance it out to taste. We'll leave it right around there. Okay, and last but not least, let's just say if we want to do a little rouge to the model. Normally I don't recommend men touch makeup on a model because we don't know what the heck we're doing, but just for teaching purposes, let's hit New, come over here, double click on the word Effects to reset everything. We're going to click on our color swatch. Let's come over here and do something. Let's say we'll do a hue of something like 130 and 13 saturation. Okay, just a little bit of a rose. You can see up here, just a little rose color. We'll see if I can do that without getting into trouble. Come up here, still big, soft, and subtle. I'm going to come up here right above the cheekbone. I've been told that's where you ladies put it. I just watch and look and appreciate. Don't fortunately have to do it myself. I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to tap. And that may be all that I do, or maybe tap and stroke. Okay? And again, I'm going to leave it a little bit more extreme so you can see it. So there is our color before, after, before, after. Okay? Again, if it's a little bit extreme, I can always click on the color swatch with that pin active, tapping the H. You can see it's still active. But why don't I come up here and I'm going to click on the model's lips. And we'll do a little fill. And I'm going to take the size of that brush down, or hit our forward slash. That's going to give us our A and B brush, which in this case is set pretty much to the same thing. So I'll manually take it down. Here is our brush, and I do want to make sure that I'm just within the lips. I don't need to color the teeth. Let's tap that O key so we can see it, and you're going to see how I do my little jiggery pokery here. So there's the top lip. It's obviously messy. Option or Alt click. Here's our eraser, a little bit more subtle feather. I don't have to worry about a smaller brush because I can come up here and just use my eraser, okay, in concert to get it exactly as I would like it. We'll do the bottom lip. Because it's such a subtle tinting, I don't have to be too careful with it. It's not like I'm actually applying a darker lipstick. I'm just adding a little color on top. Okay, O to hide that mask. There is our little match. Let's go ahead. We do have another little area over here. There's no color here. This doesn't change luminosity. If there is nothing here, if I take this same color and click over on this cheek, click, I can be just that messy because there is no tone, and the color swatch only affects hue. There's nothing there, so there you have it. And speaking of there you have it, there you have it. There's what we did just with the adjustment brush. We did our adjustments to the eyes as we'd done before, using the kitchen sink adjustment on the irises, doing a little plus brightness and reduction of saturation on the whites of the eye. We went around the eye in terms of our little overall sharpness to the image, using this little pin here. That was, of course, a plus clarity and plus sharpness. And our little magic trick was coming up for the skin and doing our minus clarity and plus contrast to exaggerate the shape of the light around the model's face. And last but not least, we came in and did a little color overlay, quick little tint to do a little burst, little accentuation of the light on the model's cheeks and lips. Well, there you have it, Glamour Retouching within Lightroom 3. I hope you liked it. I think it's pretty darn cool.